When a dense thrombus suddenly lodges in a cerebral artery, the forward momentum of red blood cells halts immediately. Neural tissue is starved of oxygen. To save that tissue, clinicians rely on mechanical thrombectomy, a procedure to physically remove the clot. But the therapeutic window for this intervention closes entirely after 24 hours. Acquiring a CT angiogram to locate the occlusion takes only minutes. The operational bottleneck happens next. Image interpretation often stalls in reading queues, especially during off hours or at regional centers without continuous neuroradiology coverage. To address this delay, hospitals are deploying artificial intelligence as a clinical decision support tool, designed specifically to automate stroke triage and accelerate specialist notification. To test if this technology holds up in clinical practice, researchers validated the Methinks CTA-LVO algorithm. The study processed 379 patient scans across 4 different institutions, utilizing 4 distinct CT scanner vendors. The primary endpoint was to evaluate the standalone diagnostic performance of the algorithm by comparing its automated output directly against the ground truth established by independent expert neuroradiologists. Fast processing speed is useless if the system generates excessive false alarms or misses subtle clots. Solving the stroke triage bottleneck requires a level of diagnostic accuracy that clinicians can actually trust under chaotic real-world conditions. The top-line results set a high baseline. The algorithm achieved a 95.8% sensitivity and an 88.6% specificity. Looking at this chart of the receiver operating characteristic curve, we can evaluate the software's overarching discriminative performance. The area under the curve is 0.976, indicating excellent diagnostic capability. We can see exactly where the algorithm succeeded and failed on this confusion matrix. Out of 142 confirmed positive large vessel occlusions, the AI successfully identified 136. Looking at the negative cohort, out of 237 non-LVO controls, the software correctly dismissed 210 cases. This chart breaks down the data by specific occlusion subtypes. To evaluate clinical reliability, we have to stratify the performance across the M1 segment, the intracranial internal carotid artery, and the M2 segment. For proximal occlusions, the algorithm reached near-perfect sensitivity. It caught 98.5% of M1 blockages and 97.1% of ICA occlusions. However, performance measurably drops when looking deeper into the arterial tree. For the M2 segment, sensitivity falls to 89.7%. This drop-off reflects a distinct anatomical reality. M2 branches have a much smaller vessel caliber and higher anatomical variability. They also frequently receive collateral blood flow from distal branches, making the exact point of occlusion difficult to spot. This is not uniquely an algorithmic failure. General radiologists without specialized neurovascular training also exhibit their lowest detection rates when evaluating these same M2 occlusions. A 95.8% overall sensitivity clears the bar for regulatory approval. But true clinical trust is built by opening the black box and dissecting the exact 4.2% of strokes the AI missed. The algorithm completely missed the occlusion in exactly 6 cases. Analyzing these false negatives allows us to identify the model's precise blind spots. The first major edge case is an incomplete blockage. This image displays an M1 segment occlusion the software failed to flag. Looking closely, there is residual contrast distal to the thrombus, forward blood flow with volume preserved. The study's expert reviewers defined a large vessel occlusion strictly as a complete blockage without any forward flow. The AI accurately detected the moving blood and, strictly following its parameters, correctly ignored the partial thrombus. The second major miss occurred further down the vascular tree in the M2 segment. This blockage is located in a very distal branch involving a small caliber vessel. The visual signal is incredibly subtle, pushing the technical limits of standard CT resolution. Crucially, an independent review confirmed that the AI never missed a stroke by misattributing a target vessel in the anterior circulation to the posterior circulation. Spatial mapping remained highly accurate. The algorithm doesn't fail at random. False negatives are confined to subtle branches and incomplete occlusions, precisely the cases most fiercely debated among clinical experts. On the other side of the matrix, the software triggered 27 false positive alerts, representing an 11.4% false alarm rate. These false alarms are not arbitrary errors. As this pie chart shows, the 27 cases cluster into 4 distinct, clinically rational categories, and upon expert re-review, 3 of these were actually subtle true occlusions. The largest source of confusion comes from severe narrowing of the artery, known as stenosis. This scan shows a critical extracranial stenosis. The extreme reduction in arterial caliber limits blood flow. To the algorithm, this severe restriction perfectly mimics the visual signature of a complete occlusion. We see the exact same logic applied here. This focal MCA stenosis has severe vessel wall irregularity, triggering an LVO alert even though a tiny amount of blood is still passing through. The second major category of false alarms involves the algorithm accurately finding a clot but violating the operational rules of the study. For instance, the AI flagged this scan as positive. There is a very real P1 segment occlusion located in the posterior cerebral artery. The algorithm correctly identified a complete blockage, but because this specific validation study strictly evaluated the anterior circulation, this accurate detection was manually penalized as a false positive. The software also accurately detected distal M3 and M4 branch occlusions. These were similarly categorized as out-of-bounds errors based on the study's tight anatomical parameters. The remaining errors are minimal: 2 alerts triggered by physiological vessel asymmetry, and only 5 cases were completely normal studies the AI overinterpreted. An AI flagging critical stenoses and posterior occlusions acts as a sensitive safety net. Capturing dangerous abnormalities is exactly the behavior desired in urgent triage. In a clinical environment, acquiring the scan is only the first step. The digital DICOM data packets must route seamlessly through a hospital's complex server network architecture to reach the radiologist. This is where the software's defining operational metric comes into play. The algorithm achieved a mean time to notification of exactly 3.30 minutes. This timeline starts the second the first DICOM series hits the router, encompasses AI processing, and ends when a diagnostic alert is generated. Under conventional workflows, that same scan might sit unattended in a digital queue, waiting for a radiologist finishing a prior read. The algorithm targets this latency. By instantly flagging a likely occlusion, the system prioritizes the study, moving it to the top of the specialist's queue for immediate review as soon as they are available. This speed is highly scalable. The software maintained a consistent sensitivity above 95% across 3 of the 4 distinct hospital systems tested, successfully processing data from every major CT scanner vendor. Importantly, negative flagged studies are not deprioritized. A scan without an AI alert simply proceeds through the standard clinical workflow without any added delay. The software operates strictly as an automated second reader. It accelerates specialist notification and surfaces complex cases, but leaves ultimate clinical judgment entirely in the hands of the physician. By combining a highly sensitive, anatomically logical error profile with a 3.3-minute notification speed, this algorithmic triage directly translates image data into saved therapeutic time.